They were not operatively on this landscape.
Författaren Lasse Berg på jakt efter människans sanna natur. Vetenskapens värld om jordens snällaste apa. Måndag i 2:an.
Josef Goebbels var en av Nazi-Tysklands starkaste retoriker under andra världskriget. Inte så konstigt att han också var propagandaminister. I kvällens program ska vi ta del av hans dagbok som visar olika sidor av honom. Det här är den 8:e och sista delen om andra världskriget och slutligen Tysklands öde.
December the 3rd, 1937. Popped over to Schwanenwerder late in the afternoon. Magda was a little sick. She was so kind and patient. The children were so sweet. I loved them all dearly. We chatted, played and messed around. It was great fun. In the evening, I monitored some films in Berlin. Maidenhood, a Prague film with Lida Barova. Wonderful acting, magnificently directed, but the locations were somewhat grubby and dirty. Typically Czech. It does absolutely nothing for me. But there's no denying how skillfully everything was done.
Deutschland begeht in den Bayreuther Festspielen 1938 den 125. Geburtstag Richard Wagners, in dessen unsterblichem Wirken die germanische Welt ihren herrlichsten Ausdruck fand.
July the 25th, 1938. Bayreuth, Villa Van Fried. Magda was very happy. She is better, and we are both happy to be back together. The Führer had already arrived. He was in a good mood, very friendly. The festival. Tristan. We all showed up in a big procession. First scene, magnificent. Second, slightly embarrassing and kitschy. The final scene, not good either. But that music, those acoustics, incomparable. Thousands of Czech Germans are below, calling out for the Führer. It's truly stirring. The Führer told me he will be resolving this issue very soon, and he'll be as good as his word. The big opportunity will arise one day. August the 18th, 1938. A tough day. A long heart-to-heart talk with Magda in the evening, which was ultimate humiliation for me. I'll never forgive her. She is so hard on me and cruel. I need powerful medication to sleep, and I haven't eaten a thing for 3 days. The same never-ending routine at work. I can hardly bear it anymore. I have no one to help me. I don't want anyone anyway. It's important to feel pain in life and never to run away from problems. This is the most tormented moment of my life. November the 10th, 1938. Major demonstrations against the Jews in Kassel and Dessau. Synagogues set alight and shops demolished. In the afternoon, news came that the German diplomat von Rath was murdered by a Jew. But I'm feeling better now. Went to a party reception in the old city hall, which was packed. I mentioned the Jewish matter to the Führer. He said, "Let the demonstrations continue, and withdraw the police. The Jews need to experience the people's fury at first hand, just this once. It's only right and proper. I passed the requisite instructions to the police and party. Everyone rushed to fulfill their orders. Now it's time for the people to act.
Gelegentlich seiner Reise, die ihn durch verschiedene Staaten des europäischen Südostens führte, besuchte Reichsminister Dr. Goebbels Ägypten, wo er von der deutschen Kolonie in Kairo begeistert begrüßt wurde. Bei Gizeh besichtigte Dr. Goebbels die Pyramiden und ließ sich anschließend von dem Leiter der deutschen Ausgrabungen bei Saqqara, Dr. Juncker, die historischen Denkmäler und den Stand der Ausgrabungen erläutern.
August the 23rd, 1939. Yesterday, the announcement of the non-aggression pact with Moscow proved to be a global sensation. The balance of power in Europe has been shifted. London and Paris are stunned. The Poles are full of bravado, but that makes them look ridiculous. It was a brilliant move by the Führer. Let's see how the world reacts. Military convoys are moving. I work without a break from midday to late afternoon. I'm supposed to be dictating my speech for the party conference. But it's an impossible task. I have no idea who I'm supposed to be attacking and who I'm not. The Führer wants to speak to me. I agree to visit him on Wednesday. September the 1st, 1939. Yesterday. At noon, the Führer issues the order to attack at about 5 a.m. It seems the die is cast now. Goering remains skeptical. The Führer doesn't believe the English will intervene. Excitement has reached a maximum level. At home, work. I put finishing touches to the proclamation to the people and the party. I work on propaganda posters for Poland. We are prepared. April the 18th, 1940. The Führer praised the Luftwaffe. It has completely revolutionized war. In the long term, sea power will be no match for air power. We have an advantage in this area and need to maintain it at all times. Question: when are we going to make our move? That depends on the weather, which is still lousy. We need to attack England. And once we start, we must finish the job. We can't afford any more delays, so we need to be patient. July the 5th, 1940. How much longer until it really gets going? I can hardly restrain our press, and the people too. They are thirsting for war against England. October the 18th, 1940. Took off from Tempelhof early in the morning. Arrived outside Paris at about 1 p.m.
Reichsminister Dr. Goebbels besuchte die Soldaten der Westfront. In einem Fliegerhorst der Luftverteidigungszone West. Das Material, das unsere Aufklärer heimbrachten, wird sofort ausgewertet, um der Führung Kenntnis von allen Bewegungen des Feindes zu verschaffen.
I attended the briefing, all very disciplined and stylish. Things here look well organized. I talked with Goering for a long time. His people are wonderful.
Ich hab die ganze Welt gesehen, vom Madagaskar bis hinauf zum Goldenen Turm. ich nicht zurück, in jedem Augenblick, nach dieser Stadt, in der ich froh sein kann. Paris, du bist die schönste Stadt der Welt. Paris, du bist die Stadt, die jeder liebt. Paris, du bist für mich das Paradies. Paris, Paris.
October the 19th, 1940. I traveled to Paris with Goering. What a wonderful place. The peacetime, big city atmosphere is back again. Lots of soldiers. I strolled through the streets with Goering. Then I bought a few things in the shops. In the evening, we went to the Casino de Paris, a variety theatre. Not as good as in Berlin, but plenty of beautiful women and a lot of nudity. We would never dream of putting that on a Berlin stage. Ate at Maxim's. It's nice to be with Goering, who is being very kind to me. He has a fantastic lifestyle. The war seems a million miles away. Goering really is a nice chap. I went to bed late, dead tired. October the 20th, 1940. Flight to Trouville. In the distance, the English coast. Magnificent weather. Fighters scream past overhead. Goering has everything under control.
Their Majesties continue to share with their people the perils of the London air raids. They have spent many hours inspecting the damage and personally seeing that everything possible is being done for the homeless and distressed. They toured, among many other places, the famous Madame Tussauds, an early casualty. And here are some of the victims rescued after the bombing. If only they were real. And as everyone knows, the big shops in Oxford Street have been badly hit. The bombing of places like this may seem terrible. It is in fact shocking, but it certainly won't win the war for Hitler.
October the 23rd, 1940. Churchill has issued an appeal to the people of France. Impudent, offensive, and bristling with hypocrisy. A revolting, fat beast. I drafted a speech with a sharp, withering response. If we don't answer them, the English will continue to draw strength from their illusions.
Lieber Papi, die Soldaten siehst du uns hier auch marschieren. Und du hast es schon erraten. Wir sind da und gratulieren. Musst heraus und fit gefasst, weil du heute Geburtstag hast.
October the 30th, 1940. 43 years old. A little reflection and meditation, which helps on a day like this. The children were first to wish me happy birthday. They stood in line like organ pipes, recited their poems and gave me gifts and flowers. How wonderfully sweet. We watched a film of the children, with tears of joy and sadness. It was all so nice. November the 7th, 1940. Rain and fog. Dismal weather in Prague. Saw the sights. St. Vitus Cathedral with all its treasures and the magnificent old buildings, streets and squares. I am in love with this city. It feels German, and we will have to make it German again. Reception in the City Hall, in a truly beautiful room. Long speeches. I added a few kind words too. Our people here are constantly getting at the Czechs, reopening the old wounds. That isn't good propaganda. I try to repair the damage. April the 2nd, 1941. In the evening, premiere of Uncle Kruger for a large group of guests at my home. Fantastic excitement. The film is a great success. Everyone was thrilled. The star, Emil Jannings, has managed to surpass himself. The kind of anti-English film you can only dream of.
Dafür habe ich dich nach England geschickt, dass du mir wiederkommst als ein Fremder. Du bist ja verengländert.
Das darfst du nicht sagen, Vater.
Was darf ich nicht? Kannst du die Wahrheit nicht hören? Sieh dich doch an. Sieht so ein Bur aus? England, England. Jedes dritte Wort England. England ist unser Feind. Unser unerbittlicher Feind. Wer mit England paktiert, liefert sich England aus. Aber solange ich lebe, wird das nicht geschehen. Das schwöre ich dir. So wahr mir Gott helfe.
April the 6th, 1941. Feelings are running high over Uncle Kruger. The reviews have been wonderful. A few stuffy bureaucrats from the foreign ministry have taken exception. Everyone else is thrilled.
Reichsminister Dr. Goebbels empfing Staatsschauspieler Emil Jannings, ihm seine besondere Anerkennung für den neuen Tobis-Großfilm Ohm Krüger zum Ausdruck zu bringen. Bei dieser Gelegenheit überreichte der Reichsminister Emil Jannings als erstem deutschen Filmkünstler den neu gestifteten Ehrenring des deutschen Films, der in Zukunft für besonders große Verdienste auf dem Gebiet der deutschen Filmkunst verliehen wird.
May the 13th, 1941. In the evening, dreadful news. In breach of the Führer's orders, Hess took off in a plane and has not been seen since Saturday. We have to assume he is dead. The Führer's communique suggested delusions as the cause of his flight, together with misplaced hopes of securing a peace agreement, an almost unbearable setback.
Unser Dank ist das Gelöbnis, in guten und in bösen Tagen zu Ihnen zu stehen, komme was da wolle.
It's impossible to assess the consequences at the moment. The Führer is absolutely crushed. What a spectacle for the world. The Führer's deputy turned into a psychological wreck. It's horrific and unthinkable. We grit our teeth and plow on. June the 22nd, 1941. Yesterday, I told my staff. Incredible astonishment everywhere. The majority had already guessed the truth. Started working immediately, feverishly. The radio, press and newsreel services were all mobilized. Everything ran like clockwork. 3:30 a.m. The heavy artillery is thundering now. God bless our weapons. Outside, Wilhelmplatz is empty and silent. Berlin is slumbering. The Reich is slumbering. A great, wonderful era giving birth to a new Reich. A painful birth, maybe, but it is already striving towards the light. A new fanfare is resounding, powerful, thunderous, and majestic. I read out the Führer's proclamation to the German people for all the radio stations. It was a momentous occasion for me as well. The burdens of weeks and months past were shed. I feel utterly liberated.
Der Führer zieht nach monatelangem Schweigen nunmehr in 12. Stunde die noch einzig mögliche Konsequenz mit den Worten: Ich habe mich entschlossen, das Schicksal und die Zukunft des Deutschen Reiches wieder in die Hand unserer Soldaten zu legen.
June the 24th, 1941. 1,600 feet of newsreel from the start of our Russian campaign. Some of our new weapons are shown. Huge monstrosities that smash to pieces everything in their way. The divine judgment of history is being passed on the Soviet Union. The anti-Russian front in Europe is taking shape almost by itself. We are doing nothing ourselves so as not to arouse suspicion. I believe the war against Moscow will prove our greatest coup, psychologically and perhaps even militarily as well. June the 27th, 1941. Statements from Russian prisoners of war reveal truly dreadful ignorance. That is the product of the Bolshevik education system. No sign of any training or discipline. Many soldiers are shooting themselves rather than being taken prisoner because people have put the fear of God into them about our men. Our broadcast propaganda isn't getting through, so we need to drop leaflets in order to set them straight. August the 20th, 1941. The Führer has told me that I can deport the Jews from Berlin immediately the Eastern campaign is over. Berlin must be Jew-free. It is an outrageous scandal that 78,000 Jews, most of them parasites, can roam happily in the capital of the German Reich. They ruin not only the city's appearance, but the atmosphere as well. Things will change for the better when they have to wear badges, but getting rid of them is the only way to solve the problem completely. September the 1st, 1941. Venice looks like a real jewel in the midst of the sea again. It really is the most beautiful city I know. I'm staying on a boat, the Cyprus, which is anchored near St. Mark's Square and offers a wonderful panorama of the city. You can get some peace and quiet on the boat and don't get caught up in the bustle and hurly-burly of the Biennale quite as much. Venice packed with film people from all around the world. Lunch at a wonderful palazzo by the Canal Grande. That's what makes Venice so grand, and I would love to transplant at least one of these magnificent palaces into the stony wilderness that is our capital. Every time you enter one of these palaces, you appreciate how vital it is to rebuild Berlin along the grandest lines, so that it offers interesting sights for visitors a few centuries from now. September the 2nd, 1941. With the exception of Mussolini, the Italians have no leaders whatsoever. They claim to be masters of improvisation, but for the most part, their improvisations go wrong. Organizing and preparing for something systematically, that's not their forte. In the evening, to mark the start of the Italian contribution to the Biennale, the new Roman film, The Iron Crown, is being shown. The premiere is a complete flop. The film is a grand anthology of cinematic implausibilities. It's not even worth discussing. The Italians had pinned all their hopes on this premiere, but their own audience was upset. I am very happy that failed literary experiments of this type are no longer possible in German cinema. I have worked indefatigably to eliminate all this aestheticizing experimentation. It can only be to our benefit that the Italians lack any kind of talent in this field. The evening concluded with a monumental reception given at Cinecittà, with lots of pomp and ceremony. But what good are gala events if the films are hopeless? Films matter, not receptions. After the event, I took a stroll through the moonlit city. Venice possesses an enchanting beauty, especially when there is no artificial lighting, and its towers and silhouettes are a veritably magical sight. The war is a remote, if unavoidable, necessity, and this city demonstrates more persuasively than ever that war can only ever be the means to an end, never an end in itself.
The Prince of Wales has anchored. Mr. Churchill leaves to go aboard the United States cruiser Augusta, in which Mr. Roosevelt, supposed to be on a fishing trip in his yacht Potomac, has come to the appointed place.
September the 7th, 1941. I was shown a film of the meeting between Roosevelt and Churchill in the Atlantic. It is miserably and amateurishly made, meriting no attention whatsoever. So this rubbish is what the English call propaganda. How superior we are to our enemies in this area. They make a lot of noise, but it's all about nothing.
Hallo, Herr Rühmann. Können wir nachher mal rüberkommen zu Ihnen?
Ja, natürlich. Ins Atelier, nicht?
Wunderbar.
Jetzt ein bisschen eilig.
October the 16th, 1941. During the past 2 years, we have produced cinematic achievements of previously undreamt of proportions. This is mainly due to our success in presenting modern themes in modern ways.
Ich fahre jetzt zur Wohnung meines Bruders, ziehe mich dort rasch und bringe meinen Koffer her. Können wir morgen eine ganze Karte lösen.
Etwas früher lösen. Einen Satz früher lösen. Noch
früher?
Denn sie muss ja allein im Bild bleiben. Sonst kommt sie zu spät aus dem Bild. Satz früher.
The new cinema generation is mediocre. They make a far too bourgeois impression. Hardly any of the men or women we have chosen will leave their mark internationally. This must change. If German cinema is to conquer the world, it must boast actors who can become household names. I'm not going to relax until we have made real progress in this area. November the 19th, 1941. I have been reading Churchill's book, Blood, Toil, Tears and Sweat, a compilation of his speeches from the past 2 years. It demonstrates a polemical intelligence and is written with exceptional skill. He does have a distinct style, even if the cynicism of his arguments seems somewhat surprising to our way of thinking. There's no denying that Churchill is an adversary who demands respect. He isn't quite as stupid as Chamberlain was. November the 30th, 1941. The Führer has never taken the view that we should seize any major Soviet cities. There is no practical benefit, and you end up having to feed masses of women and children. The aim is not to occupy Moscow and Leningrad. They are to be destroyed and the land plowed up. I find the Führer's disdain for prestige in his handling of the war admirable. He isn't even contemplating conquering Moscow and holding a victory parade there. The objective of this kind of war is not to win prizes, but to destroy the enemy. That's what counts, and we are seeking to attain this goal with all our might. December the 21st, 1941. I am reading a lengthy report from the end of November, drafted by an officer on the Eastern Front. It was sobering reading. Everything there is in short supply. Food, petrol, weapons, ammunition, people. The mood among the troops is still relatively good. Nevertheless, they have a vague feeling that something has gone wrong. The Führer's appeal will, of course, have a liberating effect. Our overly optimistic propaganda, by which I mean the propaganda that very much against my will seemed to assume that the campaign in the East had already been won, is regarded with utter contempt. The Reich's press officer, Dr. Dietrich, hasn't got a clue how much damage he has done. His speech was an absolute disaster. At the precise moment he was talking, the soldiers at the front were fighting their toughest battles and facing their greatest hardships. It's easy to imagine what the simple infantryman makes of this patriotic drivel. I am only disappointed that people hold me partly responsible, although I not only had nothing to do with them, I fought against them. February the 15th, 1943. In the late afternoon, I began dictating my speech for the Sports Palace. I had finished and corrected it by evening. I believe it is very effective. It may prove to be one of my most masterful achievements as an orator. A speech like this is needed for morale. It is necessary to give the German people some encouragement. If only it were possible to reproduce yourself 1,000,000 times over, so that you could achieve 1,000,000 times more than you can today. February the 19th, 1943. Yesterday. At 5 p.m., the long-awaited rally at the Sports Palace began. The numbers were overwhelming. The gates had to be closed at 4:30. The atmosphere recalled a wild mood of mass hysteria. The people of Berlin are currently the most alert political audience we have in the Reich. Almost the entire cabinet, large numbers of regional directors and Gauleiters, and almost all the secretaries of state were present. This was indeed a cross-section of the entire German population.
Gegenstände behaupten, das deutsche Volk wehrt sich gegen die totalen Kriegsmaßnahmen der Regierung. Es will nicht den totalen Krieg, sagen die Engländer, sondern die Kapitulation. Wollt ihr den totalen Krieg? Wollt ihr ihn, wenn nötig, totaler und radikaler, als wir ihn für uns heute überhaupt erst vorstellen können? Seid ihr entschlossen, dem Führer in der Erkämpfung des Sieges durch dick und dünn und unter Aufnahme auch der schwersten persönlichen Belastungen zu folgen?
I was, I believe, in very good speaking form and elevated the rally into a state of total spiritual mobilization. The rally ended in tumultuous chaos. The Sports Palace has never experienced such scenes, not even before 1933. The German nation is prepared to sacrifice everything for the war and our victory. I will make sure that total war does not remain pure theory.
Lautet von jetzt ab die Parole: Nun, Volk, steh auf und Sturm brich los!
March the 3rd, 1943. I learned en route to Berlin that the city had been hit by a major air raid during the night. From the initial report, I could not have appreciated the full impact of the attack. I immediately took a tour of the city to inspect some of the damage. I began at St. Hedwig's Church, which was in a terrible mess. The priest at St. Hedwig's begged me to find another hall for their services. I granted this request. Small gifts foster friendships. May the 7th, 1943. I discussed our new major project, Kolberg. In this film, we portray a courageous man and the determination of a community to resist, even though their plight appears desperate. This film will serve as an important lesson, particularly in those areas under attack. The film is based on real events.
Les Prussiens ne tirent pas, mais où reste donc l'artillerie de Gneisenau?
The director, Harlan, who initially hadn't wanted to do the film, is now all for it. He promises me the premiere for Christmas. We will probably be in dire need of it by then. November the 24th, 1943. I got an overview of the situation in Berlin, which is depressing indeed. I just can't work out how the English have done so much damage. The propaganda ministry was spared, for the most part. The scene confronting me at Wilhelmplatz was one of utter desolation. First thing in the morning, an extended conference with the party's district directors and others responsible for Berlin, during which we discussed what needs to be done. We are improvising a lot. It is clear that the response to the bombing raids is exceptionally effective. Berliners know instinctively when it's worth trying to save an area and when they ought to be leaving it.
Der Gauleiter besucht Berliner Verpflegungsstellen. Zigaretten werden verteilt. Es ist jedem die Möglichkeit gegeben, dem Minister persönlich seine Sorgen und Nöte vorzutragen. Dr. Goebbels sagte, weder Engländer noch Bolschewisten werden Berlin wieder aufbauen, wenn wir diesen Krieg nicht siegreich bestehen. Wieder aufgebaut wird diese Stadt einzig und allein von uns selbst.
February the 25th, 1944. The Führer found warm words for the people of Berlin. He stressed that Berlin had only truly become the Reich's capital during the raids of recent months. Berliners had demonstrated a courage and manliness during the bombing raids that few had thought they possessed. June the 7th, 1944. Yesterday, during the night, the first reports started arriving about the Allied invasion in the West. The Führer was in an exceptionally lively mood. The invasion is taking place exactly where we had anticipated it. Unless absolutely everything goes wrong, we should be able to cope. Unfortunately, the enemy has already sent some tank units into action, but we will be mobilizing our reserves. 2 top-rate tank divisions have already left. The Führer is convinced that we will expel the enemy units that have landed and wipe out their paratroops.
Mit stärkstem Beifall nahmen die Versammelten die Ausführungen des Reichsministers über den Einsatz der neuen deutschen Waffe V1 auf.
Ich habe damals nach den schweren Angriffen auf die Reichshauptstadt vom 21. und 22. November in Berlin erklärt, es wird die Stunde kommen, wo wir das den Engländern heimzahlen werden. Die englische Presse hat mich am anderen Tag auf das Massivste angegriffen und die höhnische Frage aufgeworfen, ob die neue Waffe, die ich dort angekündigt hätte, etwa im Propagandaministerium statt im Rüstungsministerium erfunden worden wäre. Ich habe es damals nicht für meine Aufgabe gehalten, die Engländer eines Besseren zu belehren, sondern ich war im Gegenteil der Überzeugung, je länger sie glauben, dass sie nicht kommt, umso besser ist es. Denn Überraschung ist auch eine Waffe.
June the 18th, 1944. Our weapons of retaliation are the #1 subject right around the globe. The English may be doing everything within their power to counter our new secret weapon, but they aren't succeeding. The people of London are panic-stricken, flabbergasted. The bombardment of London hasn't really halted since Thursday evening. There is no real defense against our missiles. July the 7th, 1944. Enthusiasm has subsided dramatically. Both the V1 and our attempts to repel the invasion in the West have been disappointing, nor is anyone holding out much hope in the East. Our information management has come in for severe criticism in the press and on the radio. Our journalists and presenters have again been shooting their mouths off too much, something I have always criticized. The people don't want any more glossing over of problems. They want to hear the truth and nothing but. Hegert believes we could harness the slogan, blood, toil, tears and sweat for our own ends. A slogan like that would render us immune to any setbacks.
Der Tag des Volkssturms ist ein kraftvoller Beweis dafür, dass kein Feindterror das deutsche Volk beugen kann und dass die Herzen seiner Menschen über Masse, Material und Hass triumphieren werden.
December the 1st, 1944. Kolberg was shown. It is a true masterpiece.
Vollbürger! Preußen! Deutsche!
Keine Liebe ist heiliger als die Liebe zum Vaterland. Keine Freude ist süßer als die Freude der Freiheit. Aber ihr wisst, was uns blüht, wenn wir diesen Kampf nicht ehrenvoll gewinnen. Darum, welche Opfer von dem Einzelnen auch gefordert werden mögen, sie wiegen die heiligen Güter nicht auf, für die wir kämpfen und siegen müssen, wenn wir nicht aufhören wollen, Preußen und Deutsche zu sein. Bürger und Soldaten, vom Karrensknecht bis zum Bürgergeneral. Die beste Verteidigung einer Festung ist der Angriff!
The film is positioned so skillfully, politically speaking as well, that you might suspect it had been commissioned to provide answers to all those questions currently agitating the German people. In terms of the morale of the nation, this film is equivalent to winning a battle. February the 28th, 1945. There's no point anymore in tiptoeing around the issues, nor will it help the Führer if we remain silent to spare his feelings. The discussion I had with him was extremely heated and dramatic. But the Führer agreed with me on each of my points. I felt he was annoyed that the situation had deteriorated so much, and not that I had spoken so bluntly and frankly. If someone like Goering steps completely out of line, he must be brought to reason. Bemedaled fools and vain, perfumed fops have no place in our war leadership. I shall not rest until the Führer has restored order. For instance, it is quite simply terrible style for a senior officer of the Reich to be prancing around in a silver-grey uniform right now. What effeminate behavior, given the current situation. I certainly hope the Führer succeeds in making a man out of Goering again.
Kampfraum Frankfurt, unsere Stellungen an der Oder. Der Gauleiter von Berlin, Reichsminister Dr. Goebbels, verschafft sich einen persönlichen Eindruck von den Vorbereitungen zum Abwehrkampf. Der Minister mit Ritterkreuzträger General der Infanteriebusse. Entlang der Oder haben sich Grenadiere und MG-Trupps eingenistet.
March the 9th, 1945. At midday, I drove out to Görlitz. The weather was clear and frosty. The countryside was bathed in glorious sunshine. On leaving the ruins of Berlin, you enter a region that seems completely untouched by the war. It's a really happy feeling to be in the countryside and breathe fresh air once again. The residents' lives have only been disrupted slightly. They are to be envied. Immediately afterwards, we approached the front and entered the war zone. In the distances, you can see the occasional flash from enemy or German guns. Then we arrived in Lauban. The town was fairly badly damaged during the previous day's fighting.
Die Befreiung der Stadt Lauban. Gegen diesen Ort vor Görlitz treten in den ersten Märztagen mit starker Schlachtfliegerunterstützung deutsche Panzer und Grenadiere zum Gegenangriff an. Nach tagelangen heißen Gefechten dringen die Deutschen am 6. März in die Stadt ein.
Paratroopers who fought magnificently during the Lauban operation were on parade in the rubble of Lauban's marketplace. General Schörner addressed the troops and found the most complimentary words for me and my work. In particular, he praised my constant, indefatigable efforts to promote total war. He said I was one of the few men that the front-line troops listened to. No trace whatsoever of defeatism. I experienced this for myself when addressing the Home Guard in the crammed town hall in Görlitz. My speech was about the need to fight and never give up.
Jene Divisionen, die jetzt schon zu kleinen Offensiven angetreten sind und in den nächsten Wochen und Monaten zu Großoffensiven antreten werden, werden in diesen Kampf hineingehen wie in einen Gottesdienst. Und wenn sie ihre Gewehre schultern und ihre Panzerfahrzeuge besteigen, dann haben sie nur ihre erschlagenen Kinder und geschändeten Frauen vor Augen und ein Schrei der Rache wird aus ihren Kehlen emporsteigen, vor dem der Feind erblassen wird.
In the German city of Reit, there is an ancient castle which the people of the city presented to Dr. Goebbels. They'd been ordered to do so by the Nazi party, but I don't suppose they raised any objections, for at that time they thought the doctor was a very fine fellow. They had a rather special regard for Goebbels because he was born in Reit. We know, of course, how unfortunate it is that Goebbels was ever born at all.
March the 11th, 1945. What upsets me most is the behavior of the people from my hometown of Reit. The Americans have made much of it. A certain Herr Vogelsang, known to me from the early days as a full-blown National Socialist Philistine, went to the American occupation authorities offering to be the mayor. I am going to deal with this man. I am preparing a plan to liquidate him at the first possible opportunity. It will be carried out by party members from Berlin, trained for this type of operation. The Americans, as was to be expected, have launched a so-called Free German newspaper in Reit, one of the first towns to be occupied. But their triumph seems to be somewhat premature. I shall find ways to put things right again, at least in Reit.
Verteidiger Berlins, auf euch sind die Blicke eurer Frauen, eurer Mütter und eurer Kinder gerichtet. Sie haben euch ihr Leben, ihr Glück, ihre Gesundheit und ihre Zukunft anvertraut. Ihr kennt jetzt eure Aufgabe und ich weiß, ihr werdet sie vorbildlich erfüllen. Die Stunde eurer Bewährung ist da. Ich bleibe mit meinen Mitarbeitern selbstverständlich in Berlin. Auch meine Frau und meine Kinder sind hier und bleiben hier. Mit allen Mitteln werde ich die Verteidigung der Reichshauptstadt aktivieren. Mein Denken und Handeln gilt eurem Wohl und der Abwehr unseres gemeinsamen Feindes. An den Mauern unserer Stadt wird und muss der Mongolensturm gebrochen werden. Unser Kampf wird das Fanal sein für den entschlossensten Kampf der ganzen Nation. Von dem fanatischen Willen erfüllt, die Hauptstadt des Reiches nicht in die Hände der Bolschewisten fallen zu lassen, sind wir solidarisch zu Kampf und Arbeit angetreten.
Hela vägen från EU.
Señor presidente, señoras y señores diputados.
Via riksdagen, utskotten och de statliga verken.
Vi är allvarligt bekymrade över den grova organiserade brottsligheten i Sverige.
Vi föreslår att socialtjänsten ska kunna lämna information till polisen.
Till universiteten och seminarierna.
Kan tv och datorspel bli blodigt allvar?
Allt hänger samman. Vi ger dig möjlighet att ta demokratin i egna händer. SVT Forum och Ur samtiden. Hela veckan i Kunskapskanalen.